Live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Well, Herman Cain has been caught in a big, fat, gigantic lie. That's coming up. Australia is in the process of committing suicide. That's what James Dillingpole says. He's coming up for one segment in the next segment. I've got the big breaking news here today on Fast and Furious and how it ties in with this fake Iran plot that, of course, involves Mexican drug cartels, so Holder can look like he's fighting Mexican drug cartels. This is right out of Central Casting. We predicted it. Not hard to predict. We're going to tear apart the 999 plan, which has got VAT, sales taxes, everything in it. I mean, talk about globalist dream. What do you expect from a Federal Reserve operative? The Federal Reserve got the income tax in 1913. Now they want more, and they're going to get it because it's so much fun to be conned by Herman Cain, unless we wake up. And then they got Tiddlywinks, Tinkerbell, whatever his name is, Romney, running around, endorsed by Baron Harkonnen, Jabba the Hutt, or whatever his name is, Chris Plumper. And then we got, I shouldn't joke, I'm a little overweight myself. The point is they're saying, because he's fat, people like him, because he doesn't look presidential. Herman Cain's black, so he might do. It's what you stand for, not how much you weigh or what color you are. I know Ron Paul is in good shape, but he's an older guy, kind of like Dudley Do-Right, but he's Dudley Do-Right, ladies and gentlemen, with a brain. He's not a Ken doll or a smooth-talking Herman Cain. Or a male cheerleader like Rick Perry. I know you like those people, some of you. All right, let's go to some of your phone calls ahead of our next guest. Let's talk to Corey in North Carolina. You're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me on again. I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you're taking calls on this right now, but the Occupy Durham, Occupy in North Carolina, my experience, and then also recommend someone for you to interview.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt now the entire Democratic Party has endorsed Occupy Wall Street. It's got some good people in it, but it is led by collectivists that want to just take money from the rich instead of get rid of the corrupt Federal Reserve. So it's basically a bunch of Bolsheviks if they have their way. What's your experience with the Occupy Raleigh up there?
Well, I went to the Durham one. I don't know the Raleigh one, but in Durham it was actually run really, really well. It was open-ended. It was based on consensus. They split off into committees, and even the organizers, when they split off into the committees, they said, we're not here to push a certain view or any particular angle.
Yeah, but what did they come up with afterwards? Because if they know predominantly it's mainly a bunch of union people that show up, then they're going to get their collectivist Obama system that Wall Street wants to make people dependent through.
Well, they haven't made any specific demands or proposals yet. We're still meeting and organizing. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm there and that I am at least a single voice talking about the Federal Reserve and trying to identify the actual problem. It seems like a lot of them, realize that there's an issue, but they're having trouble actually pinpointing it.
Well, I'm glad you found some nice folks, because all I've run into, well, Houston, they were pretty nice, but they had a lot of in the Fed signs. What I've mainly run into is don't bring your Ron Paul signs here. We just want to get to rich people. And I'm trying to explain, the ultra-rich use government to control and to get your tax money and to shut down their competition. What the general public thinks of as rich is somebody driving a new car and living in a big house. Those are the people that create jobs. Some middle-class person that makes $100,000, $300,000, $1 million a year, that's what drives the economy more than anything. Those consumers. Because we're a consumer society. We don't have industry. But interesting, that's interesting to get your story on that. Thank you so much. Aaron, Don, Vincent, and Scott and others, your calls are coming up after I talk to James Dillingpole briefly, the London Telegraph, and then we're going to get into Herman Cain and a lot more. Stay with us.
You can bet your life on eFoods Direct. Alex has told you about the amazing, great-tasting, long-term storable food from eFoods Direct and how a food savings account is your best insurance against natural disasters, job loss, and high food costs. But did you know that this dehydrated food also protects you against foodborne contaminants like E. coli and salmonella? Those poisonous critters can't live in low-moisture food from eFoods Direct. Ask for the Alex Fall Special. The Fall Special is a 24-day supply of food in a convenient portable container. A $259 value for only $199. Save $60 on 160 servings of the best food on the planet. Call 800-409-5633 and ask for the Alex Fall Special and go to efoodsdirect.com/Alex. Call 24 hours, 800-409-5633 or efoodsdirect.com/Alex. You can bet your life on eFoods Direct.
A very wealthy U.S. citizen is predicting that in 2011, we will witness the most important day in America in more than 50 years. He says it will change everything about our lives. The way you shop, travel, invest, educate your children, and even how you take care of your health and your own family. Now, this man has made some outrageous predictions over the years. The crazy part is, he's usually right. You see, he predicted the collapse of GM, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and America's biggest mall owner, General Growth Properties. In fact, Barron's called his work a dire prophecy. Recently, he created a video, which you can watch online for free, detailing his biggest and most important prediction yet. And it's a real eye-opener. I can't stress this enough. You should at least watch this free video online today. He explains everything you need to know, including simple steps you can take to protect yourself. You can find the video at www.endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica, the number 3.com. Watch the free video at www.endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica3.com. Alex Jones here with vital information concerning our nation's fragile food supply. Folks, there are some truly dangerous trends forming, and I think it's important for my listeners to do three things right away. Number one, study the past. History really does repeat itself. Number two, learn to spot the dangerous food shortage trends. Number three, take decisive action. A perfect storm is brewing for a global food crisis. That's why I'm telling everyone to read the new book, Rising Prices, Empty Shelves. Warning signs that trigger the deadliest famines in history. Don't get caught unprepared when the crisis hits. This book is only available at risingpricesemptyshelves.com. You'll also get a free copy of Supermarket Survival, How to Cut Your Grocery Bills in Half. Again, that website is risingpricesemptyshelves.com. That's risingpricesemptyshelves.com.
From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
We are back live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, U.S. says Iran plotted with Mexican drug cartel to assassinate Saudi ambassador. Now, the Attorney General has now been subpoenaed, and he knew yesterday when they put out this new plot that he was about to be subpoenaed. So now people vaguely paying attention just hear that Iran was going to arm Mexico and try to blow up embassies and kill people. And so now people just kind of foggily are hearing, oh, Iran was involved. Oh, Holder's fighting drug cartels, not giving them thousands and thousands of weapons and letting them ship cocaine in the U.S. That's all come out in federal court. They've declared national security months ago in Chicago. Fast and Furious is only the very tip of the iceberg. That's coming up. Herman Cain caught in lies, saying that he never said that we don't need to audit the Fed. Proof of those lies coming up. Paul Watson has a big article on it at Infowars.com. But I wanted to just for one segment, we appreciate him joining us here on short notice. I wanted to get James Dillingpole on because I saw with horror today that the lower house, even though upwards of 90% in the polls I've seen are against this in Australia and different governments have been thrown out in the last few years, The implementation of the carbon taxes has already bankrupt many of the sheep farmers, beef farmers, but now they're going to jack up the taxes, and I've got a breakdown per household, home inspectors, and you can just type into the search engine under carbon tax, green police to inspect home without warrants. So just unleashing the Soviets, unleashing a new 21st century Bolshevism for the bankers. And it says, protests disrupt question time after carbon bill passes the lower house. And James Dillingpole, writing for The Telegraph, he also writes for a lot of other big publications and is a best-selling author, says Australia commits suicide. Yeah, no one, I mean, this is meant to create a post-industrial world. And, of course, the big globalist mafia, they're all exempt, like General Electric, from their own carbon taxes they write up here with Ken Lay and Goldman Sachs here in the U.S. So going now to James Dillingpole, joins us to break this down. I agree with you. Australia is committing suicide right now. Even though the public doesn't want it, these are authoritarians. So tell us exactly what's happened.
You've got Julia Gillard's coalition administration passing by a very slender majority, I think 74 votes to 72, this tax on Australia, which almost none of the people want except for a few liberals in the cities, a tax on carbon which is going to destroy the Australian economy. And the reason is that of all the world's major economies, none is more dependent on fossil fuels than Australia. And the reason for that is Australia is an island of coal, an island of minerals, an island of gas, an island of oil. Australia has got lots of fossil fuels. It makes sense for a country like that to use its natural resources. So here is Julia Gillard, against the wishes of the Australian people, as the world enters the worst depression ever, probably, imposing this tax, which is going to be a tax on everything, because everything in Australia is to do with carbon. Now, what's interesting about Australia is I think it's a kind of bellwether for the rest of us. You know, it's not just about this swinging tax on carbon. You remember the case a few months ago of the Australian farmer who went on hunger strike to protest about the way that his land was not his land. He'd bought this farmland, but he couldn't clear it of trees because the trees in Australia have been declared a carbon sink, which means that effectively private property has been abolished in Australia. You can't clear your own land of trees. There was another case where a farmer who had cleared his trees around his house as a firebreak was fined by the federal authorities for clearing the trees away from his land. And guess what happened? A fire broke out. This guy was the only guy for miles around whose house wasn't burned down because he had sensibly cleared those trees illegally.
Unbelievable. And I saw 2 years ago sheep farmers under the first regimen of this, because they always jack it up, tying himself to a tower for months in a hunger strike because he has to pay a tax on every sheep he has for their flatulence. They're saying the methane is evil. And they're taking half his land off limits that he paid for, that had been in his family for generations. This is so incredible. And then it's cold-blooded in that insiders get exemptions from it. So it makes the government and the regional governments like these mafia dons where no one can operate with them.
There is a battle going on for the soul of Australia, just as there's a battle going on all around the world. It's happening in America, it's happening in Britain. What's interesting about Australia, I suppose, is that we now have in Australia an opposition party which is absolutely committed to undoing the damage which has been done by this carbon tax. You know, Tony Abbott, the opposition leader, has vowed in blood, he says, that he will repeal this carbon tax as soon as he gets into power. And I think given the unpopularity of this carbon tax, he will get into power. It'll be very interesting to see what happens to Australia when it becomes part of the resistance to this global warming craze. You know, all this stuff that's being imposed on us by the New World Order of the United Nations and so on. If Australia tries to resist this nonsense, as I believe it will, what will the rest of the world economies do? Will they try and punish Australia? You know, if there are still people like Obama running America, for example, you know, if the EPA still has power, what's going to happen?